Welcome back. This is my last creation. I think you've all seen this from last year, right? Like, so these are just all things. So this one is full balaclava. I don't go to the ski at all, but I think suppose this is supposed to be the way it looks if I do go to the ski. I suppose this will be the way it looks. It'll be good for like really. I used this during winter actually because it was pretty good so that your nose doesn't get too cold because the dry airs can be very. Also, I'm doing this in summer, so well today is only 23 degrees the way on the day I'm recording this, so it's all right. It's the top 23 degrees, so it's a pretty cool day. um anyway, welcome back to my filler series. So this is the last of the filler series, so hopefully by next week we will get back into our normal scheduling, whatever it is. That probably just a normal vlog of me going around Sydney and just going grocery shopping. A normal day in my life vlogs until I figure out what I really want to do. But I feel like that's gonna be a very long thing, right? I think like figuring out what you need to do, you just have to do it. That's my 40-year-old advice, to be honest. And although it is a hypocritical advice because at 40-year-old I still don't know what I wanted to do. The fact is, like when I was in middle school, I wanted to be a psychologist. And then even though that plan got disrupted, I already had plans like where I wanted to go for university, and where I wanted to be and everything. And because, yeah, I had it set out in my mind kind of. And so I needed to go to this high school. And from that high school, I needed to work very hard to go to this university. And then that plan got disrupted because I had to move to Australia without my consent. And here I am, 30, 26, 27 years later. Uh, so that's not the issue, right? By the time I got here, and I still wanted to be a psychologist. So after I finished my high school, I applied for Bachelor of Psychology. I got rejected, of course, but I got accepted to Bachelor of Science and major in psychology, and there you go. So after learning about psychology and everything for about 4 years, I realized like I did not have the capacity to. Oh, my battery is low. Oh no, it's okay. I did not have enough English in me to manage to get a good score to go to fourth year honor. But I also had something else happen. Studying psychology, what I learned that back then, 20 years ago, because I graduated in 24 in 2004. So 20 years ago, I graduated with Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Arts, majoring in psychology and sociology. And I did not know I had to major in my sociology degree because, sorry, in my art degree because I think it took me to by my second year that I realized that I did not have a major because I thought in my first year I can major psychology through my Bachelor of Arts, and I was going to major in physiology for my Bachelor of Science because I thought, oh, it would be really cool if I can go to medical school. I did not have the capacity to do that. Um, yeah, I was just a stupid 16-year-old or 17-year-old by then. I started uni at 17. Um, and I wasn't young. Like there was so many people younger than me. So I'm Asian, so that should explain everything. Uh, but yeah, but I thought that was the case throughout my first year, and then I found out as I was going to my second year. But apparently, you can't major psychology. This was like 23 years ago. Um, 24 years ago. Yes, 24 years ago. Because I started uni in 2001, and today this year is 2025. Some of you might not have been born yet, but it just felt like yesterday for me. I still feel like I'm still a university student, and I still feel like I haven't moved on from that. I still feel like I'm frozen in time. Anyway, that's not the topic for today. The topic for today was. Anyway, I couldn't major in psychology through Bachelor of Arts, so I have to figure out like what I wanted to major in Bachelor of Arts. So I just ended up with sociology because it didn't have any exams. And yes, people, that's how we make decisions in life. And the only reason I went to UNSW, which is like part of the University of Eight in Australia, because I was living in Bondi Junction back then, and I got accepted in health management in University of Sydney, but that's in Lidcombe, and I have no idea where Lidcombe was back then, and I did not want to wake up early and go travel to Lidcombe from Bondi Junction because that just felt really far away. So I just took my original plan going to psychology in New South Wales University because it was only 10 minutes away by bus. Background context filled. We're back on topic. I forgot what was the topic. Well, but I mean, like, I started psychology, right? And then I started psychology, and after about, I had something else like happen, that kind of made me like go off rail from that particular course of career. But not really, because like I always in psychology, even though I'm not studying in it or having a full blown career in it. I think like one of the reason why I didn't really persisted with psychology was because back then all the lessons that I took, like all the subjects, is basically telling you what's wrong. It's telling you what's wrong, but it never told you how to fix it. So there was no fixing it. Like, so every time I go into psychology, I just learned what's wrong because there was no topic about positive psychology back then. Well, in the university courses anyway. And I haven't really gone to a lot of self development lectures back then either. I started going after I finished with psychology, after I finished with university. But yeah, back then. So by the time I got into university, my resolve of becoming a psychologist was quickly diminished because first I didn't really have enough English for me to keep going, and my academic result were not strong enough, so I didn't have the scores, the marks to go to the second to fourth year. Something I had to expect. Um, and yeah, but the main point was is that back then I really wanted to help other people. That's why wanted to become a psychologist, right? And maybe there was also an element like maybe because I did not know that I was so traumatized of everything. I just want to fix people, and I realized like now, of course, 20 years later, like the people that I want to fix were probably myself and also the people around me, the family that I grew up in and everything. So that was probably my resolutions. It's like it's probably cool to wanting to know how people work and how the mind work. Of course, like I had no idea I was autistic back then, so that was also that. You just wanted to know how normal people operate. Like I guess I just wanted to know the manual for people how to be a normal human being. But yeah, my resolve was really weak by the time I finished with university majoring in psychology, mainly because maybe I burned out. That's probably the main reason why. But it was also because they just didn't have an answer to how to fix depression, how to fix bipolar, how to fix all of these abnormal behaviors that we all seeing. Like, so they didn't have any answer. And then I just kept thinking like this is the only thing that I could remember now. It's like that feeling of what's the point then? What's the point of doing all of this, having all of these studies, having all these results, knowing all of this, but not having any kind of answer in how to deal with depression, traumas, and all the things that are basically problematic. Of course, I also acknowledge the fact that I was probably being very defensive because I couldn't get into the fourth year because I didn't have enough marks on in it. So that's probably also that. But truthfully, I think like that's what got me into the self help industry afterwards straight away. Of course, via multi marketing, like multi level marketing, MLM, which I definitely not recommending. But that was like one of the attraction, because one of the attraction is usually with MLM, multi-level marketing. You can Google this or YouTube search it, or on TikTok, doing some, just search it. And is that they're offering this positive psychology, this manifestation techniques, and I think they didn't say the words, but like trauma techniques, like trying to resolve your trauma. I think that's how I got into it, basically, because they are offering this kind of promises. I don't think they fulfilled those promises. I felt like I was gaslit for the past 20 years, and I only realized that I was gaslit maybe a couple of years ago. But I think that was really attractive. The promise of a resolution, the promise of, solving mental health issues, And I was young and I believed it, and I believe that, if your mental health issue did not get resolved, it was my fault. It was my fault that it didn't manifest. It's my fault that I'm not rich because I didn't know how to work the manifestation technique properly. It's my fault that, I'm not healthy. It's my fault that I got sick because I'm attracting sickness into my life. I believed in those things, and I realized, of course, that's not your fault if you got sick. Of course, it's not your fault if you're poor. It's not your fault that, the system is rigged. It's not your fault that your health is, especially if you're a woman and you're divergent, it's not going to be aligned with the studies out there, because you're not a man and you're not neurotypical. So your body will work very differently. And you also probably have to be aware of what kind of ethnicity you are, what kind of physical attributes that link to you, because your diet is probably very much linked to what your ancestors eating. That probably works for you best because you've been eating from the same land for years and generations, and you need to honor that. Like, I've got a friend where they put on like 12 kilos when they were in Australia, and then they went back to Asia, and they just drop all the kilos straight away without changing any of their routines, because they just eat what they normally eat, what their ancestors eat, and they just get back to that nutrient dense food again from where they're from. And so there's that too. So just don't believe too much, I guess. I feel like as you get older, you need to kind of just make that decisions. Like, yeah, you wanted to do stuff, just do it. And then if you got there and then now it's not the same as what you have imagined, like I was when I was in psychology. Like, I am thinking of going back there now and again. Like, I'm thinking of, like, maybe I should take like a psychology degree and going towards the psychologist route, but I'm still unsure about it. But I'm going back there with a very different mindset, with a very different personality even. And so, yeah, so I think, like, if you have an idea of you want it to be something or want have to have something, I think you should go for it, because it's not until you get there that you know whether you still want it or not. And I think you should not talk yourself out of it, because you need to experience it for yourself. Like, no amount of what other people say about the experience that you want or about the things that you want will actually be firsthand experience. It won't be real until you experience it yourself. In my experience, like this, it wasn't until I studied psychology that I realized that it wasn't what I wanted at that time, because at that time the psychology wasn't um, hasn't really gotten to the core of the issues yet and how to resolve it. Now I have my EMDR, my bilateral stimulation, to kind of work myself out of traumatic experiences, reprogramming my brain so that it hopefully have enough neuroplasticity so that it changes enough behaviors and thought pattern in my life, and and create positive pattern, more positive life patterns in my life. It hasn't resolved any of my financial issues yet, but it resolved enough of my inner tensions for now so that I can go to sleep somehow. Maybe like it used to be a 1 out of 5. Now it goes to 3 out of 5. So it improves something in my life, and I feel like, oh, there is movement, when it comes to mental health issues and nervous system issues. So now I'm seeing psychology differently, but it took like 21, 24 years to get here of psychology itself as an industry to move here. But even then is always consistently changing. So I think that's that too. Just because it wasn't right for you at that time, and because you still, doesn't mean that you have to abandon it altogether. Your old dream can still be alive, maybe after being put into a dormant situation for a long time. It hibernates. So things are never straightforward. I think, like, if you're trying to manifest something, you just have to go for it, try to reach it, and if it doesn't, just put it aside for a little bit and maybe get back to it later, like me. um yeah, so you don't have to push for things to happen. I think you just have to manifest things. I think manifestation is not a straightforward thing. I think that's my conclusion. It's it can go round and round, and it's not always the way you imagined it. Like, I remember in June 2012, I put a picture, a screensaver, a wallpaper on my laptop, work laptop mostly, because work is. I used to do accounting and it's so boring, but I loved it because my autistic brain basically loved the fact it's just repetitive and it's boring, so it loves it. But the fact that I have to be in the office was just very torturous. And being, in an environment where you just have to exist and commute, and it was just really torturous that bit. Even though the people were very nice and the people that surrounded me was okay, there were a lot of tensions and problematics, but I didn't feel it that much. I think it was more about the commute and the fact that I have to be in the office that really got to me. um but I put like the wallpaper of Sweden, of like the old town of Sweden on my wallpaper, and I just kept imagining myself wanting to be there, wanting to go there and stuff. And about 2 months afterwards, I think my mom died, and then I ended up being in a spiral afterwards, like downward spirals. And now, like 12 years later, I'm probably still in the pit. So that bit has not get resolved yet, but I was in Sweden in that particular picture that I had put up in my wallpaper by December of that year. So I definitely manifested that into reality. And the day I was in Sweden definitely was not a good sunny day. It was like so wet. It was raining and we couldn't go anywhere and it was cold. It was just like a very stereotypical Scandinavian weather, I suppose. It wasn't beautiful at all. But at least I know that, that place exists and I was there. But I guess like that was probably a second example of like me trying to manifest something and manifested it in reality, and then feeling like, oh, this is not how I imagine it to be. I guess like I understand when Bashar or Abraham Hicks basically say, you wanted it for the feelings, when you want to manifest things, you want it for the feelings. You don't actually want the real, actual physical reality much as you think. And I think back then I always thought, oh, that's bullshit. But now I think they're probably right, because I feel like, I think I told you about that apartment in Sydney, just across from the UTS building. So if you from Sydney, you know what I'm talking about. There is a building, apartments in Central Plaza, which is like just across from UTS Broadway Tower building, and that apartment is basically. An example of how they want it to be environmentally friendly, and they want it to have like a vertical garden apartment basically. So they put a lot of plants on those tower buildings, and the apartments themselves are usually not a lot of bricks. They just use a lot of glasses, and they also put like a huge metal glass, no, not metal mirrors. so that they can deflect or they can reflect the power, the sunlight in onto the buildings that didn't get the sun, so that the plants can have their photosynthesis. So, and those that building now, those two buildings now, those two towers are now basically falling apart because of the plants are eating it away. Like they have moisture issues, they have a lot of broken solar, not solar panels, but like a lot of panels that the reflection panels are falling apart, and it's becoming a hazard now towards the pedestrians downstairs, that when they walk it can fall off and then hit them. And so yeah, so a few years ago I was really feeling bad about myself because I wanted to manifest myself inside that apartment. I want to live there. And I think someone on the internet basically said it has like a 36% vacancy rate. And the last time I walked past, like one of the buildings basically was supported with this a lot of straps to support like each of the panels that is hanging outside the building so that the plants don't fall off. So it's basically like supporting the each plant's hangers so that it stays, and it just looks like it's a construction place now again, which looks really bad. But a few years back I was really fantasizing myself living in there and feeling such a failure for not being in there. But now I saw it, I see every time I walk past it and I see it, and I'm just thinking maybe we don't know what we want. Maybe not having something manifested, maybe sometimes it can be a blessing. You don't know what kind of problems it brings you, right? And even when things manifested according to what you want, it still doesn't mean that you actually getting what you wanted. It's like so confusing, but I feel like it makes sense. But so now, like, I'm in a position where I feel the only thing that stays after all of this, after all things that some manifested, some don't, some big things manifested, some don't. It's like even like last year when I manifested finally after through hard work, of course, of my YouTube channel being monetized. I just thought like, I was being really optimistic about it. I was like, oh, I wanted to have my YouTube channel monetized so I can make a lot of money out of it. And I just kept thinking it was going to go up and up and up and up. Of course not. It go up for 2 months and then it just go tank down all the way down to December. So just because I got what I wanted, which was monetized, but I didn't specify that I wanted to be monetized and for the income to go for the income to go keep going, to keep growing and growing and growing. I didn't specify that. I should have, but I did not. Maybe I should have. um so yeah, so now I'm just like I know like now, like even if I say things like, oh, I wanted to have a lot of money, now I know even if I have a lot of money, it probably will not be a satisfaction inside of me. It will not feel as if that my all my problems are resolved. So even though I'm asking for like the universe to make me lots of money, preferably either through a windfall like a lottery ticket or through my own earning, like through me making like through the channels of my own makings, like comes either through my shops, my art shops, or through YouTube channels. It's like it has to come from either the things that I have worked on, or it has to come from like a windfall, like it has to come from those two from me, because if I feel like if that doesn't come from that two channels, that means like there's strings attached, right? If someone gives it to me, if it's inheritance or something, which I don't, because both of my parents died, they didn't leave anything for me that is significant enough for me to build wealth, which is why I'm here and still stuck in this blah 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 blah. But let's say that happens, that usually would come with a lot of friction, because that means like there's probably someone out there that is not satisfied with that particular decision, right? So I know like that would be the case. So I feel like, the money probably better off if it comes from my own, even if it does come from like a lottery, or like it comes from my own things, it probably would come with a lot of set of its own problems, taxes, having to actually talk to people to figure out how to manage it, and blah blah blah, having to realize like I probably will gonna risk a lot of it if I talk to the wrong people. So there's that too. I feel like as a 40-year old wanting something, manifesting something, it's no longer like innocence. Like the innocence is gone. Like I no longer want something and then believing that you're gonna solve all my problems. It's not like that anymore. Like I do want money now. I do want like the windfall money. I do want millions and millions of dollars to make sure that I feel stable and have freedom of choice, and make sure that I feel secure in my own making, so that I can have my own like power decision making wise, making sure that I can have a place to live in when I'm old and stuff like that, and without bothering anyone, becoming a burden, and basically begging for help so constantly, which how I feel I have lived for the past 40 years. And giving, well, not giving back, but like living life on my own terms. That's probably what I wanted it out of that. But at the same time, I don't have any illusion or fantasy about the fact that if I get all this money, that my problems are going to go away, because I feel like I know like there will be problems, and I know there will be things that I probably don't like about it, and I'm still going to want the money despite all of this, because it's just what I decided. But at the same time, I feel like that's not a bad place to be, not a bad place to manifest from. Like knowing that when you want to something, it doesn't fulfill you wholly. It doesn't make you. It doesn't change you. It doesn't change your life much. It doesn't make it. It's not the answer to your problems, I suppose, because it will just create a different problem. I think that's the wisdom from being alive for so long and having different things manifested in some ways. Yeah. Anyway, that's my take on manifestation. I know that's a bit long winded, but hopefully that's useful somehow. The takeaway point is that try to manifest something not because it just you just want to escape, I guess, or just want to fix something. I think like you need to manifest something knowing the pros and the cons, and the pros and cons of the pros and cons, if you know what I mean. I think you don't. I mean, like if you say like, oh, if eh, it's like like what is the cons of having the pros, like the cons of having a lot of money is like you probably have to be aware that a lot of people are gonna be wanting to be your friends, not because they want to be your friends, they're probably gonna want your money and stuff like that. So that's the cons of having a pro, which is like having a lot of money. The cons is that. But what is the cons of having a lot of money? Cons of having a lot of money, you probably have to learn how to live life very differently. That's the cons. What is the pro of that cons? Well, the pro of that cons is that it will force you to become to a different person, and it will force you to gain different skills, and it probably will make you a more around all-rounded person, and you probably gain different perspective about life, and you probably will change how you tackle life from then on. It might make you a little bit wiser than you were you before, a less judgmental person probably. All those things, like things that you just have to play in your mind a little bit, so that you don't kind of make whatever it is that you want to manifest as higher than you. You're not putting it on a pedestal. Like I used to, like, being a psychologist, I used to put it on a pedestal. And when I got to studying it, it's like, oh, it's not going to solve any of my issues or my problems. It's like, oh, psychology couldn't fix, being sad or depressed or anything back then. And when I wanted to go to Sweden, I thought, oh, it would feel so cool, so awesome. It would be like so. I don't know. I just thought that it would be really cool. But when I went there, I was still very depressed because my mom passed away. So the vibe was completely different. It's the same vibe that I got from Paris too. It's like it was a dream destination for my whole 20s, probably ever since high school. I took French in high school. I always thought like being French is so cool. I even follow through with like those those stories of how French people have only coffee and cigarettes for breakfast, and I did that for a little bit. Don't do it, kids. Don't do it. It's stupid. And it's like, oh, I'm so French because I'm only having coffee and cigarettes for breakfast. I'm so cool, despite the fact that it was probably damaging my whole health system. You're young and you're stupid. You're allowed to. If you're still in your 20s, be young and stupid. Just remember, you have to pay for the price later. You pay the price later. Um, just make sure to stop doing those things by the time you're 29. Probably ease away into it because your body is not gonna be the same again after you're 30. Uh, so yeah, so manifesting things are great, but just know like you don't be infatuated with what you wanted to manifest in your life because it's just when it comes around, it will just gonna be another thing. It's just gonna be another thing, and it will come with its own set of problems, and you just have to deal with it. And I think it goes the same way with negative manifestation as well, like disasters and tragedies. I'm sure like there are a lot of people that could testify like the worst thing that happened to them turned out to be a turning point for to receive the best thing that happens to them. I remember like having a friend that was in this relationship for 10 years and it didn't go anywhere. I like this particular person, but I wasn't close to them. Like, she was a high school acquaintance basically because we were in a different group and we were basically like completely in different circles. So I can't call them a friend, definitely an acquaintance, people that I know and stuff. And she was really pretty. I really like seeing her face. She was always friendly and warm. And I got to know her story by the time it was at the end. Like, she was dating this guy from Hong Kong and we weren't from Hong Kong. And she's been dating this guy for 10 years and the guy didn't want to marry her. And they and she wanted to get married and everything, she was pretty much committed. And I think they might be living together or something, I don't know. But anyway, his mother was being really rude to her. I think she just being disrespected so much. So after 10 years, they broke it off. I don't know whether she got dumped or she dumped him or anything. And then I think like it was probably very heartbreaking for her, that experience. She basically dedicated her whole 20s for this person and was, making sure that I think his mother is saying like, "Oh, you will never be part of our family," blah 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 and stuff. And she is so hardworking. She's cute. She's warm. She's social. She's hardworking. She works two jobs, which is very common like with our generation. Like I worked two jobs as well back then. And suddenly she went to a friend's wedding after the breakups and she met her husband there. Within a year or so, she moved to the US, had a child, like very shortly afterwards. So maybe after 2 years, within 1 or 2 years, she's in a different world altogether. Married with kid. Didn't have much resistance. I didn't much have frictions. So, yeah, but imagine if she had gotten her wish of getting married to her long term boyfriend, she would not have got like her child, which was really cute. I used to follow them on Instagram. I don't anymore. I stopped following real life people on Instagram because I just felt really bad about the lack of improvement in my life. So I stopped comparing myself to them for my own mental health. But anyway, that happened. So imagine if she had gotten what she wanted, she would not have been happy as she is then. I can't say whether she's happy now because I haven't followed her for a while. It has been 10 years. But yeah, so that's just another example, I suppose. Just not, maybe sometimes, I don't know, I guess like not to be attached to the things that we want to manifest. That's a probably advice for me too, which I find to be not a good follower of because I'm still very infatuated with the fact that I really wanted to have lots and lots of money for it to come to me easily and for it to come without much work, which is very hypocritical of me, especially because you watch, like some of you probably watch all the episodes from last year where I basically posted 5 days a week for the whole freaking year. That's so much for working hard, like from wanting something and not working hard for it. No, I worked very hard for it and it didn't come true. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. So that's probably going to be the last of the filler series. I'm not sure what this girl is planning for you next month in February. So let's just see what she deals with next month. I will see you next month in February, next week. That is for you. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with me this January so far in this filler series. Hopefully, like my ramblings is getting more articulated compared to my last year ramblings. Love you guys. Please like and subscribe. I am going to ask for it this time around. And I also will plug my own shops, which is society6.com/Valorine and Valorine.redbubble if you want gifts and considering to get put your some arts on your walls, consider getting them from my shops. Okay? Anyway, I'll see you later. Bye everyone. Thanks for listening.